Hey everyone, welcome back to L2Games. It's Nick here, and today I am joined by my very good friend Kyle, and we're going to be doing something a little different today. So, one of the things I've been wanting to start on the channel is sort of a podcast type discussion on things in the gaming community. One of the more controversial topics in the last year or so has been Marvel's Avengers. So we're going to do a test episode where we talk about Marvel's Avengers and the recently released Black Panther War for Wakanda expansion and get your guys' thoughts on it. And if it does well, we'll put more content like this on the channel. But anyway, Kyle, welcome.
Hi, thanks. Glad to be here. I know that with any new podcast, it's nice to bring in an expert, and as someone who has 3 episodes of another podcast under their belt, I feel qualified.
Yes, so if you guys are new here, Kyle is the host of the Snubs and Dubs podcast. Feel free to check him out after you finish watching this video.
I would appreciate that, guys.
Kyle, I want to get your first impressions about the War for Wakanda DLC.
So when they were kind of pitching it, they were making out that it was like this, like the biggest expansion that Marvel's Avengers is going to see. And like, to be fair, it has been, but I would say only in terms of like location and enemies and such. The story that they added to it was not anything bigger than like Kate or Clint before. Like it was still just 4 hours of content. And like Wakanda looks really nice, and this outpost that like we're running around in right now, it's really nice and it's big and like it looks great on PlayStation 5.
Oh, it's absolutely beautiful. I love the views from here. They did a great job of capturing both the MCU representation of Wakanda, but also putting their own spin on it, and it just looks gorgeous.
It really shows through here, like how much effort and detail, and it is my favorite outpost so far.
Oh yeah, mine too, by far. I want to dive deeper into some more of the specifics of what they added with this DLC. But before we go too much further, I want to convey to everyone that we're not trying to hate on this game here. We're both really dedicated players. As you mentioned before we started recording, we've both got around 250 hours worth of playtime in this. We're both big fans of the IP. We both are comic readers. We've watched all the MCU movies and TV shows. So I know for me personally, and I think for you as well, we want to see this game succeed. We want to see this do well, because I want to see these characters done justice. I love the Marvel universes. I love the lore. I love the characters. And so to have a game like this where you have this amazing world and these great characters on center stage, I want it to do well.
Absolutely. And like, honestly, if you told your 12, 13-year-old self that like in a few years you would have a Avengers game where you could play as Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk, Black Widow, Hawkeye, all these guys, and that it would be a big action RPG type game, like that would hype you up.
Oh, forget 12 or 13-year-old me. You tell me that when I was in high school when the first Avengers movie came out, I would be all over that.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was really kind of strange that like how the anticipation was there for the announcement, but like once the first gameplay came out for it, it was almost like a deflated balloon. Just like all of a sudden people were like, "Oh, like it's this." And then you kind of got word that like it wasn't like open world, and like it was very co-op mission gear based type things, and so people just started to kind of lose interest gradually, and so the launch was disappointing.
One of the developers leading up to the launch said something along the lines of like, it's Destiny but with the Avengers, and I know that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way because Destiny hasn't been the most successful live service game.
No. And that was the thing, the live service element of it. Like people saw that and they were just like, ugh, not another one of these, right?
Well, and if you'll recall, leading up to the launch of this game, I was even hesitant to pre-order, and I said I was skeptical about it, but you convinced me to pre-order it, because I figured, with most other live service games, one of the things you need, especially where it's co-op focused and more of a
Mhm.
PvE game, you need someone to play with. So I figured I've got someone to
Absolutely.
play with. Maybe this will do better. And I think it
No.
struggles being a story focused live service game because most story focused live service games do struggle. You look at
Yeah.
something like Destiny, Destiny 2, Anthem, and now Marvel's Avengers, and
Yeah.
there was another one, Outriders as well.
Yeah.
But all of them have in common that they're PvE focused, where the central element in them is the story. And the problem with that
Mhm.
is that a story is an inherently finite narrative structure. There is a beginning and there
Yeah.
is an end. Once you get to the end, you need an incentive to keep coming back and playing. Otherwise, there's no
Mhm.
point in it being a live service title. People run
Yeah.
through the content, and people today have really short attention spans. So once you get through that
Absolutely.
content, there needs to be some kind of incentive to come back and play it.
Yep. And like with Marvel's Avengers, like, to kind of tie into the War for Wakanda expansion, if somebody was asked me now, if they were like, "Oh, I have an interest in Marvel's Avengers, like, is it a good time to play it?" I would probably say yeah. Like, if you're interested enough, then there's actually a decent amount of content to play through now. But with story-based live service games, because the story itself and the elements that are within a story take a long time to develop and get out. Like like you said, people's patience are low, and so but between each expansion, there's that time where people are either just grinding or like not playing your game.
Mhm. And
And I think the problem this game has is there's not the in between story stuff is not the most compelling.
and it doesn't help that this game was loaded with bugs at launch, because now not only do they have to spend the time developing the story and writing these
Yeah.
characters, they also have to iron out all those bugs. And you can see that it becomes this really difficult process where they're trying to get content out and keep players invested, but at the same time, they want it to be a polished experience. And so it's kind
Yeah.
of hurt the game. And with
Well,
that in
and
mind, I kind of want to dive into one of the more specifics here, because one of my big complaints when the game launched was the user interface. There was this
yeah.
really big problem where you couldn't compare your gear because, like, one gear panel would cover the other one. And it was
Yeah.
mind-boggling to me that there was a problem like that in the first place.
And that plagued this game at the start too, and it didn't help that people like yourself were pessimistic about the game at launch. And when it launched, with its limited content and a severe amount of bugs and visual glitches, like people were completely turned off, and it was hard to stay in the game as you're playing it. Like I pushed through and I put like loads of time and I got every character to power level 150 and level 50. And so I managed to get there, but by the end, like when I was getting to the last few characters, like it was it was really waning on me, like
Mhm,
the bugs and the glitches, and like sometimes it would be laughable.
mhm.
Like there's that one with the Jarvis barrier that I think sometimes still happens, or I haven't encountered it in a while, but I also haven't played in a while before the War for Wakanda, so I don't actually know. But where if somebody hit you with a Jarvis barrier, you would just like suddenly being caught in this like audio glitch where it was just like spamming the noise of the Jarvis barrier, just like on and on and on and on and on, and like it just like wouldn't go away
That was
as you were
so
running
bad,
around.
and it made that so hard to play as Iron Man that I think that's one of
Yeah.
the reasons why I can't touch Iron Man in this game anymore. I
Hmm.
just do not
And like
play him.
yeah, you could get like your AI characters, like teammates, stuck behind doors in missions, or like stuck in walls, and
Or
like you couldn't
enemies stuck in
progress.
walls where you need to beat them and they're the
Yeah.
last enemy. Yeah,
Yep.
all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And I think some of that still does happen. But going back to the user interface, it got a big overhaul for War for Wakanda. So I want to know, what do you think
It did.
of the new overhaul? What do you think of it?
Um, you know what? It's good, but it's still the same gear system. Like I don't really understand the gear even after playing it for 250 hours. Like I've kind of picked out like, what proficiency, what valor, what precision, all that stuff sort of does, but like only after researching extensively and trying my hardest to understand it.
Yeah,
But
and
like it
oh,
looks
go ahead.
nicer on the straight up screen now. And I haven't gotten completely used to it yet because I'm used to the old interface, but um, I like the how they've cleaned it up a little bit, you know?
It does look nicer on the face of it, but I still really struggle with it, especially because they remapped a lot of the controls within the menus. Like it used to be, I
Mm,
think, hold X on PlayStation to upgrade an item. Now it's like hold R2. They switched a bunch of the buttons around, so the muscle
yeah.
memory for me is gone, and it makes it really confusing and kind of frustrating to navigate at times. Like
Yeah.
it does look nice that it's all on one page, but that's only a skin deep change. I feel like it's just as frustrating to use now because not only do they have this one menu, but they have a bunch of sub menus within that. Like to dismantle your gear, you have to click on the item and
Yeah.
then you have to click another button to go to manage gear and then dismantle stuff. And
Hmm.
so adding more layers to it to try and clean up the home screen for me doesn't really help it. If anything, it makes it more confusing and frustrating for me.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how they
Like
managed
especially
to
with
get this wrong
gear.
twice.
Well, especially with gear, like you mentioned the dismantling thing, and I appreciate what they were trying to do with that and to prevent people from accidentally dismantling something they didn't want to dismantle. And they also added that submenu where you can just mass dismantle gear, which is kind of a nice quality of life improvement. But just like the way that they've made it, like you said, sub menu after sub menu, like it complicates things to like if I were a new player and I came in and looked at this menu right now, it would be so intimidating to like
It's
understand
really
what was going on.
overwhelming. And one of
Yeah.
the things that bugged me is on the main inventory screen, you can't see your resources now. And that's a whole different problem with the game too,
Yeah.
is the resources in general. I know you were talking about how, it's kind of hard to understand the different stat categories like intensity,
Yep.
valor, might. And on top of that, you also have like 10 different resources, all of which have the same basic function, which is just to upgrade your gear. And it makes me
Yeah.
wonder, like, what was the point in even having different resources? Because the only difference is that there's a little
Yeah.
icon next to them. It really
Yeah,
makes
no, I
no difference at
agree.
the end of the day. And they needlessly overcomplicated the game because they have the different resources. So you have like the nanites, the plasma, the polychoron, the upgrade modules. But then you
Hmm.
also have two different types of currency with the credits
Yeah.
and the
The
units.
units.
And so it confuses new players. And the new UI with this update really didn't do anything to address any of that. So I could definitely see new players feeling incredibly overwhelmed by
Hmm.
having to navigate this.
Yeah, and like you could argue that that is a hurdle that is going to have to be overcome for all live services games like this. Like I tried to play Destiny a little while ago, and it also was overwhelming in the sense of like the gear and everything. But you do eventually kind of get used to it. And same with like Apex Legends, for example, with gear, not gear, guns and attachments and certain levels and how those things work. Like I remember the first time we went up to a replicator and we were like, nope, this is too complicated,
Yeah,
and we walked away.
and I think
But
that's
I
just
do.
it's kind of the nature of the beast with any
Hmm.
loot-driven game is that there is going to be a bit of a learning curve, but I
Yes.
also think it goes both ways because there are a lot of games that really do it better. Any RPG,
Hmm.
sure, you're going to have to do some reading in menus. That's just the way it is, but
Yeah.
they could have done a much better job. And I've spent a lot of time on the Avengers subreddit, and I've seen so
Hmm.
many community designed user interface mock ups that look so much
Which is
better
really nice, right?
than
Yeah.
the one they have in game. And I'm wondering, like, just bring someone in from the community to consult who has actually played the game extensively and just have them
Hmm.
advise you on how to design it because it feels like the developers are really struggling with how to design that element.
Hmm. If to lay off him for a second, the characters. and their like designs and their fighting styles are all really good.
Yeah,
Like,
and
and I
that
think that's the strongest suit of this game.
absolutely the core combat gameplay is great. I do have a couple issues here and there, but
Hmm.
for the most part, I love it. And I do want to move on now and get into Black Panther himself and what you think.
Hmm.
Because gameplay wise, I think he's great.
I like him. I don't love him. And like I've so far I've loved Kate. I liked Hawkeye, which was like I was all ready to love Hawkeye because he's one of my favorite Avengers, weirdly. Um, and with Black Panther, of course, I was really excited. But maybe it's just because I'm so used to playing somebody like Kate with range, and with Black Panther, he's very like brawler type sort of style, and that was different for me. But he feels fun, and I haven't unlocked all of his skills yet, but he does look like a pretty deep character, and when you can kind of unlock all of his abilities, there seems to be a lot more that you can do with him, especially with his intrinsic ability, and like charging things up. I really like the move where you can pounce on people and just like beat the crap out of them
I
while
love
they're
that
on the
one.
ground
It's
there.
my favorite
Yeah.
move of his. For me, I love the way he plays because I mean, you said he's more of that brawler type, and that's more my play style, so I can
Hmm.
see why there would be a bit of a difference there. I love Captain America in this game, so Black
Yeah.
Panther feels like a really nice hybrid between Captain America and Black Widow. You feel both that
Mm.
hard-hitting, power-punching strength of his, so you feel
Yeah.
the super strength that Black Panther has, but also the agility when you use him, especially when you get him up into a higher power level. And it's
Yeah.
just so satisfying to use. I absolutely love the sound effect of his claws just slicing through people. It's great.
Yeah.
And the character design is really good. I'm not
Hmm.
necessarily a huge fan of the Panther logo he's got on his chest. It feels like such like a 90s superhero cliche with the big logo on the chest. I feel like
Yeah,
modern
and it also
superheroes
makes
kind
it
of moved
like,
away from that.
well, especially with Black Panther, like I guess the hero himself, that title is more of a like role within
Purple
Wakanda
Rose.
than it is like a superhero
Rose. Purple
role.
Power.
And
Yeah, you
so when
don't
you
really
put
need
that
an
like logo on
icon.
him, yeah, it makes him like look like a superhero. Like Kate doesn't have like a like her target on her, at least
Yeah,
not in the
yeah.
costume we're
It
wearing right
feels
now.
like it's a little too on the nose as far as like branding him as a superhero.
Hmm.
So I kind of wish that wasn't there. But overall, I do really like the look of him, which is
Yeah.
it's nice because when they first showed most of the characters in this game, I was not a fan of the designs. I
Yeah.
could not stand Captain America and his bulky like modern
Oh yeah, yeah.
tactical military outfit. I still hate it. I have not used it
Hmm.
once. It just
No, I actually forgot about that look because I've played so much with him in another outfit. I will say about Black Panther's suits, I'm not the biggest fan of his like purchasable suits, like his suits. What would you call it? Like inventory?
yeah,
Uh,
the selection of stuff in the marketplace isn't great. Although I will say it is a lot better than what we saw from other heroes when they launched, just because it
True.
seems like a lot of what we saw in the early stages of the game was just recolors. And
Yeah.
with Black Panther, at least there are quite a few different actual designs. So
Yeah.
it they did put some effort into this, and I appreciate that. I don't know that I
Hmm.
like all the styles personally, although there are a couple that I really enjoy. The Black Panther Unconquered outfit just
Oh
has
yeah.
this sort of tribal um, look to it. Just I think that's really cool.
I kind of like the Most Dangerous Man one with the trench coat.
That
That
one is,
one's
yeah,
pretty
it's really
sweet.
cool.
And they have kind of a version of that called Exiles, where he has like a cowboy hat.
Yeah, that was one of the ones I didn't
That's
really
kind of fun.
like. I thought
Oh,
that was
really? I just find it funny.
I thought it was a little over the top. But like all the other here, there are a lot of recolors still, even though there are some
Yeah.
different designs. I think if I have one favorite out of all of these, though, it's the shadow physics. I've been sort of on the fence about getting that. It looks really cool, but I'm gonna wait
Mm,
for some MCU outfits for him
yeah,
potentially.
I think they need to. This is more of a general thing, but like when they're launching a character that has MCU outfits, I think they need to at least launch with the MCU outfits. I don't know, like they're slowly, gradually adding MCU outfits in, I guess when they're ready. Like
Well,
I guess the
I think
developers have said
some
that
of
they're
them
only dropping them
are.
when they're ready.
I don't know that that's necessarily true though, because a lot of the MCU outfits for characters leaked a couple months in advance of when they were released. Like the Captain America
Yeah,
outfit from Endgame leaked 2 months before it was released. I feel like they're
yeah,
trying to drip feed the outfits so that they can keep players coming back to the game. But with the game
yeah.
in the state it is right now, I don't think that's a good strategy.
Mhm. Yeah, um, I guess we should probably get like let's just talk about Black Panther in
Hmm.
general
Yeah,
first because I there's more thoughts I have on the game and where it should go after
yeah,
this that
absolutely.
we can get to afterwards. But um, as for the story, like I thought that it was fine. It was I think the better of the three so far. Um,
See, I've
but
kind of felt the opposite about that. I thought it was
really?
the weakest of the three.
Hmm. Because
Yeah,
I like the first two because they were still so closely tied to aim, even though this one was still tied to aim, like it felt somewhat in a distance. And I do like that they want to add story content outside of adding new characters because I think that will help with the game's longevity. But I think what people really want is new characters and new villains. And so I really liked Ulysses Claw in this game. I thought that his boss fight was actually pretty fun and Crossbones. Even though Crossbones was just like one a small villain at the start and then two just like a minor part of Claw's battle. It's nice to have like him in there that we can maybe fight him on
yeah,
more
it does
occasions.
open up the potential for more of the villain sector missions with Claw and Crossbones now, which is great.
Yeah. Hmm.
See, for me, I didn't like the story as much. As much as AIM has kind of gotten old and I'm sick of the robots, what I appreciated about both the Hawkeye DLCs is that they were tied to each other in terms of story,
Yeah.
and they had pretty big ramifications for the scope of this game at large, with the whole
Yeah.
Kree invasion and the end of the world and what happened to Nick Fury. It created
Right.
a lot of questions, but also answered a lot. So
Hmm.
it felt like it opened a pretty big window and gave me some hope for this game's future. Black
Hmm.
Panther's story is more inherently personal. It's a lot smaller
True.
scale, and the big story arc with Black Panther is that he's trying to balance both the duty of himself as protector of his family, but also as the
Yeah.
protector of Wakanda, and at the same
Hmm.
time trying to overcome his trust issues. You see that he struggles with having faith in Shuri to be able
Yeah.
to handle herself, and also struggles with having faith in outsiders because he's cut himself off from the Avengers since A-Day.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what I found with that last point that you mentioned with cutting himself off the Avengers after A-Day? Barely anything mentioned about that when he
That
shows up
that was
because
one of
he
the
thinks
problems I
Cap
had
he
with the
might
story.
think Cap is dead, you know?
Hmm.
Because like at this point not many I mean he might know, he might have resources to know, but it's not like the news is announcing that Captain America lives, you know? At least I didn't see anything like that. So I thought it would maybe be a surprise for him,
Although there
but
is
you
a
just kind
huge
of see them as
battle
them.
in San Francisco with MODOK at the end of the story, and Captain America's there, so I feel
True.
like it had to have made the news at some point. But to that point, that's one of the reasons I had a problem with this story is that there's this huge expositional dump from the shaman at the beginning of the DLC,
Yeah.
and then it doesn't really go too much into the relationship between Black Panther and the rest of the Avengers after that. Or,
No.
I mean, you don't really learn much about Claw's motives until near the end of the DLC. And
Yeah.
beyond
And then
that,
it's just like
it's
daddy
also
issues.
just a really short story. And uh, the issue I
As
had with
he's
that is like,
intended to be, though.
but at least like with Kate Bishop and Hawkeye, they both felt like part of the same expansion, Whereas with
True.
Black Panther, I kind of feel like it's more of a one-off because at the end of this, sorry, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't played it, he leaves Wakanda to go join the Avengers. So I feel like
Yeah.
Wakanda is sort of being left behind for future expansions. Maybe I'm wrong about that. They could come back. It's nice that they have established it as a place in the game, but
Yeah.
it feels very, very self-contained, and so there isn't a lot of impact it has on the story going forward, other than that Black Panther has now joined the Avengers.
Yeah. At least that we can see. And like
Mm,
as far as we know, the only character that we have somewhat had announced is Spider-Man,
mm-hmm,
and he's only for PlayStation. So I can see the Spider-Man expansion being very similar to Black Panther in its inconsequentiality.
mm-hmm.
Is that an actual word?
Yeah,
I
I think
don't
so.
actually know, but you get what I mean regardless. And so I think his plus he's like a New York hero, and New York is already in the game, and
Mm-hmm,
so like I don't think he's gonna come with anything big in terms of like location like Black Panther did, or in terms of like story because he's like probably just joining. He's not like a big part of the whole AIM story,
mm-hmm.
or he doesn't bring a lot of like outside characters or locations or threats into the game. I just can't see how that will tie in either.
Yeah,
And so, what? When's the next? Like, who could the next character be that actually ties in? I don't know.
yeah.
I mean, we could talk
It'll
about
be
that later.
interesting to see.
Yeah,
But yeah, as far as the story goes with Black Panther, I struggled with it because it seemed like they were really trying to flesh him out as a person with trust issues, but at the same
yeah,
time, it's only a 2.5 hour
He'd be
expansion.
always
So
wanted to
it's
be
hard
an
to fit that
Avenger.
in when the
yeah,
bulk of that
Nah.
2.5 hours
Uniform's hard to beat
is
in
playing
my
the
own
game.
hours.
Because,
yeah.
with a movie, you can have those moments between characters where they're sitting and having a conversation and fleshing themselves out.
Yep.
But in a video game where you want the player to be engaged, you can't just have someone sitting back and watching the story unfold. You need to be part
No.
of it, and so the action
Yeah.
takes precedence.
Can I say, I don't know if this is a controversial take, but I don't really like the voice actor for Black Panther.
Okay, I wanted to get into that next because I love Christopher Judge as an actor.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of him watching Stargate SG-1 growing up. It's my dad's favorite show. I loved him as
Nice.
Kratos in God of War, but
Yeah.
I really did not care for his performance as Black Panther. And
No.
maybe we're a bit biased because we had the opportunity to see an Oscar nominated actor playing Black Panther on the big screen,
Hmm.
but I feel like Christopher Judge just really struggles with the role. One of the things that really threw me was the accent. He
Yeah.
really struggled with the accent. It's very
Yeah, he
inconsistent
did.
throughout, and there's one part in particular where he says the word shortly, and it comes out so jarringly bad that I was just like,
Uh,
oh no.
Part of me has to wonder if maybe that was an issue of like a COVID related issue because he was probably doing this recording at home,
Mm-hmm.
likely, and having a director either over Zoom or over email telling him what to do after he sends it back. And like, I guess they had the same dialect coach work with the voice actors that worked with the actors in the movie for Black Panther.
Okay, yeah,
And
I don't remember
in
that.
my opinion, that did not come through with Christopher Judge.
Yeah, see,
I feel like a
that's sort of
lot of the other
surprise to me
actors
hearing that.
actually did really well.
Hmm. It's
But
surprising to hear that
yeah,
because it feels like Christopher Judge really did struggle with it, whereas the voice actress for Shuri sounds almost
yeah,
identical to the one in the MCU. So
yeah. Letitia Wright. She sounds a lot like Letitia Wright.
yeah, so that was great, but yeah, Christopher Judge wasn't a great fit for the role. Also, I recall when they first announced the Black Panther expansion, there was a brief clip of Christopher Judge saying Avengers with me, and his voice
Yeah.
sounded so much deeper than it actually sounds in game. And I'm wondering
Mm,
if they made some last minute changes as far as the direction they wanted him to take. Because I liked him with the deeper voice, and now it just
yeah.
sounds off to me.
It's just something that I can never really get behind because like Kate's voice actress is really good. Clint's is fine. Like it wasn't like noticeable in any sort of way, but
Hmm.
he's the first one that I've like it kind of felt didn't fit in a way.
Yeah.
Like it's like yeah,
Although to be fair, I wasn't a huge fan of Nolan North as Tony Stark, which is nothing
yeah,
against Nolan North. I love most of the roles he's in, but he
yeah,
just didn't seem to fit the character. But Christopher Judge definitely, I don't think was a good fit for Black Panther.
yeah. Which is hard to say because like you said, like I liked his Kratos voice. Like that's really where I know him
Hmm.
from.
Yeah, he's a
But
respectable
he's
actor,
good.
but just
Hmm.
not a good fit. It's same with Nolan North as Iron Man for me. A very, very highly respected actor, just not in the right role.
And that may be where they went at it. Like with the MCU, like they're casting his for the most part been very very good and like very on point. And they'll cast no names or lesser knowns when they need to. Whereas it seems with the Avengers game, they're going for the heavy hitters in voice acting. And they're just trying to make them fit within the roles that they need. And
Hmm.
so, like with Nolan North as Iron Man, and I think the other main crew were also notable voice actors.
Troy Baker as Bruce Banner. Troy Baker is,
Right.
in my opinion, one of the greatest voice actors alive.
Yeah, and he's good as Bruce actually. I like
Yeah,
his Bruce. But yeah, Black Panther.
You
Kind of
have
weird.
no
yeah.
interest in
But
learning how
yeah,
your
we'll kind of
arrows
leave
are
that as
made.
that.